In the southern city of Deir al-Balah, engines hum quietly under the dim light of dawn. A convoy of Red Cross vehicles moves slowly through the streets, white bodies marked by the familiar Crimson Cross. Their arrival signals not just a logistical act, but the transfer of grief, loss, and fragile hope between two sides that have endured months of unrelenting war. Today, Israel has announced it has received the bodies of 2 hostages held by Hamas, transferred through the International Committee of the Red Cross. The exchange is part of the delicate ceasefire agreement now being implemented inside the Gaza Strip, an agreement that remains as brittle as the shattered glass and twisted steel left behind by nearly a year of bombardment. Each movement of the Red Cross convoy is deliberate, solemn, and heavy with symbolism. Behind every door they open, behind every vehicle window that fogs with breath, there are families waiting on both sides of a border still scarred by mistrust. The hostages' remains recovered from Gaza are being returned to Israel as part of the negotiated terms brokered by international mediators, including Egypt, Qatar, and the United States. These bodies are not merely part of an agreement, they are the physical proof of human lives caught between politics and violence. Officials in Jerusalem confirmed that the transfer was conducted with coordination from the International Committee of the Red Cross, which continues to play a critical role in facilitating humanitarian operations amid the ongoing ceasefire. The Red Cross itself does not disclose operational details, citing the neutrality that defines its mission, but its white and red emblem remains one of the few symbols still trusted on both sides of this decades-old conflict. Footage from Deir al-Balah shows the Red Cross vehicles entering a narrow compound under armed escort. Dust rises as the wheels grind against the rubble-lined street. Palestinian civil defense workers stand aside, watching silently as the vehicles disappear through the gates. For them, this is one of many such transfers, but each one carries the weight of unbearable stories. For weeks, negotiations over the release of hostages and prisoners have defined the ceasefire's fragile rhythm. While aid convoys attempt to move northward through damaged roads, diplomatic convoys race to keep dialogue alive. Inside rooms in Doha, Cairo, and Geneva, mediators exchange updated lists, conditions, and verification documents, each word dissected, each comma debated. Israel's military spokesperson said the recovered hostages had been confirmed deceased during captivity and that their remains were identified through coordinated forensic examination. No further details were given publicly, out of respect for the families, but Israeli officials emphasized that the process forms part of a broader effort to retrieve every missing or detained individual, dead or alive, from Gaza. On the other side of the border, Hamas's political office described the transfer as a humanitarian gesture tied to the ceasefire's continuation, though it accused Israel of failing to uphold portions of the agreement related to aid entry and prisoner releases. The Gaza Strip today lies in ruins. Entire neighborhoods have been reduced to grey dust. Schools, once full of children, now serve as shelters for the displaced. The Red Cross, alongside UN agencies, has described the humanitarian situation as catastrophic. Access to clean water, medicine, and electricity remains minimal, and hospitals continue to operate with limited fuel and supplies. In Deir al-Balah, local residents gathered along the roadside as the Red Cross vehicles moved past. Some raised their phones to record, others simply stood in silence. For Palestinians here, the movement of such convoys has become part of daily life, reminders of both compassion and suffering, often arriving together. The return of bodies underlines the duality of the ceasefire itself, a pause in fighting, but not an end to war. While guns have fallen silent in most areas, the memories of airstrikes and ground operations still echo. Families dig through debris, searching for documents, photographs, or any trace of the lives they once lived. Israel's government has vowed to continue pressing for the release of all remaining hostages. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a brief statement that Israel will not rest until every one of our people is brought home. His words echo a national sentiment of exhaustion and determination, a collective trauma that has defined Israeli society since the first attacks that began this cycle of war. In Gaza, Palestinian officials say that thousands of detainees remain in Israeli prisons, including women and minors. Human rights groups have urged transparency in the handling of both hostages and prisoners, calling for medical access and confirmation of welfare for those still held. The International Committee of the Red Cross has remained central to these efforts, often serving as the only neutral intermediary capable of navigating the political and physical barriers separating the two sides. For its staff, each mission carries immense risk. Over the past months, several humanitarian workers have been killed while delivering aid or escorting convoys, yet the organisation continues its work, sometimes under shell fire, sometimes in silence. As the Red Cross vehicles emerge from Gaza's southern checkpoint and cross into Israeli control, the exchange is completed quietly. No public ceremony, no cameras beyond the official footage, only the sound of engines, the shuffle of soldiers' boots, and the low murmur of officials verifying paperwork. The transfer of human remains is one of the most somber tasks in wartime diplomacy, one that underscores both the progress and the pain embedded in each ceasefire deal. For families waiting in Israel, the news offers no comfort, only closure. Outside a hospital in Tel Aviv, relatives gathered as the military confirmed the identities. Some wept openly, others stood still, gripping photographs of their loved ones. The Red Cross message, "We bring people together in times of separation," feels both poignant and unbearable in moments like these. In the wider region, reactions were swift. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs praised the coordination, but warned that more must be done to sustain the ceasefire and prevent a return to hostilities. Egyptian mediators urge both parties to respect the humanitarian clauses, including expanded aid entry and evacuation of the wounded. Qatar, which has hosted many of the indirect talks, reiterated that each humanitarian gesture must lead toward a permanent cessation of violence. Analysts say the retrieval of the hostages' bodies could act as a litmus test for the ceasefire's durability. Each successful transfer builds confidence, but each violation, whether through renewed strikes, rocket launches, or delayed aid, threatens to collapse the fragile structure that months of diplomacy have built. Inside Gaza, the calm remains uneasy. Residents describe nights without bombardment as both a relief and a source of anxiety, a silence that feels temporary. Aid trucks continue to enter through Rafah and Kerem Shalom crossings, carrying food, fuel, and medicine. But local authorities warn that the needs far exceed the supply. The Red Cross's work extends beyond exchanges. Its teams also trace missing persons, assist in burials, and support hospitals overwhelmed by casualties. Their presence in Gaza is one of the last remaining threads connecting the enclave to the international system. As the convoy returns to its base, the sun rises higher over Deir al-Balah. The city breathes through layers of dust. The Red Cross flags flutter against the wind, symbols of a neutral promise in a deeply divided land. For a brief moment, cameras capture the stillness, the space between war and recovery. Behind the lens, a story of endurance unfolds. Aid workers who refuse to give up, families who continue to hope, and negotiators who navigate impossible politics to make even the smallest acts of humanity possible. Each image, the wide shots, the close-ups, the slow pan of a Red Cross vehicle disappearing into haze, tells its own story. Together, they form a visual chronicle of what it means to survive conflict, the persistence of humanity amid devastation. In Jerusalem, Israeli officials continue to weigh the next steps. Intelligence sources confirm that several other hostages remain unaccounted for, believed to be held in locations throughout Gaza. Talks are reportedly ongoing to extend the ceasefire further, allowing more humanitarian operations and additional prisoner exchanges. International pressure is mounting for a more permanent peace framework. European leaders, joined by the UN Secretary-General, have called for an immediate transition from temporary pauses to a sustained cessation of hostilities. Yet both Israel and Hamas remain entrenched in their political positions, each accusing the other of violations and delays. Still, the day's events, the retrieval of two bodies through a neutral corridor, remind the world that even amid endless conflict, small acts of cooperation are possible. These acts may not end the war, but they keep alive the idea that one day dialogue might prevail over destruction. As night falls over Gaza once more, the glow of aid trucks traces faint lines across the dark horizon. Inside Red Cross compounds, volunteers rest briefly before preparing for the next mission. In their quiet work lies a truth too often overlooked. Peace is not negotiated in conference halls alone. It is carried step by step by those who risk their lives for humanity's sake. The story from Deir al-Balah is not one of victory, but of endurance. 2 lives lost, yet remembered. 2 families receiving what little remains. one organisation standing between conflict and compassion. The ceasefire's continuation remains uncertain, but for today, the Red Cross convoy has completed its passage, a mission of dignity amid despair. And as the cameras fade, the vehicles retreat once again into the distance, their red crosses glowing faintly in the dusty twilight, reminders that even in the darkest corners of war, there are still those who move toward life, not away from it.